Welcome to the weekly Torah perspective, Parashat Bo. Let's see how we can continue the approach that we started last week, when we differentiated between the 7 makkos, the 7 plagues, which were in Parashat Bo, and the 3 plagues that are in this week's Seder. Now, I want to connect this to another problem that is posed by the beginning of the Seder. A problem that many of our commentators pick up on and that has occupied the minds of philosophers for many, many centuries. Let me just read how the Seder begins, how the parasha begins. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe. Hashem said to Moshe, Bo el Paro, come to Paro, ki ani hichbadeti es libo, because I made his heart heavy. Ve'es leiv avodov, and the heart of his servants, leman shisi also sai ele bekirbo, so that he can respond. Leman means to, in reaction to, so that as a reaction to his situation of having his heart hardened or strengthened or made heavy by Hashem, Hashem will be able to put leman shisi as ausasai ele bekirbo, so that I can put these my signs in his midst, in his innermost. That's one. Uleman, and for another reason, Uleman tesaper ba'oznei vincho uven bincho, so that you, namely Moshe and Aaron, and by extension the Jewish people, will be able to relate, to recount these things, ba'oznei bincha, in the ears of your son, uven bincha, and your grandson, eis asher hisalalti b'Mitzrayim. Now, this is a difficult word to translate. Hisalalti, I planned or I conceived to do, but the root is olul or ilo with a double lamed, and it means to cause, to give reason or to give rise to something. Interestingly, in English we say to give a rise to something means to be above, and of course it is related to ayin lamed al and aliyah, right? I will be elevated above through my actions which I plan. Right? Eis asher hisalalti b'Mitzrayim, ve'eis also sai, that is that word again, and my signs, asher samti bom, and my signs which I have put in them, which I have placed in them, vidatem ki ani Hashem, and then you will know that I am Hashem. Right, what's going on here? What's going on here? First of all, it raises the question of free will, right? What possibly can we say to Paro if Paro says, look, I had no choice in the matter, God strengthened my heart, I was forced into this corner, and he was really playing with me like a puppet on a string. So where is my responsibility anyway? That's number one. Number two is, what is this dual purpose? On the one hand, leman shisi es ausasai ele bekirbo, that I should put my signs in his midst, uleman tesaper ba'oznei bincho, and so that you can relate it or retell it, recount it in the ears of your children. Okay. For this we have to actually dive deep. And I don't want to go into all the usual philosophical arguments that are being brought when it comes to the matter of free will and foreknowledge. How is it possible that I have a free choice in my life when actually the Creator can foresee everything that I'm going to do? Doesn't that mean that everything is predetermined? These are philosophical debates that I don't want to get into because I think they are missing the point. And it is that point that I want to highlight. And I will do that by looking at those last 3 plagues and to recall and to remind you that when we discussed last week the division of the 10 plagues into 7 and 3, this corresponds to the days of creation, or to the 10 words of creation, and they are in a reverse order. So that in the story of creation, it is numbered 1 to 10, and here it's really, you should number it 10 to 1, going from 10 up to 1, and that also corresponds to the Jewish mystical idea of the 10 sephiros, the 10 emanations, of which 7 correspond to the created world, and 3 correspond to something which is above the created world. And so to say, how do I express this without causing a lot of confusion? I don't want to call it spiritual versus physical, because that's a wrong and misleading distinction. I think it is a matter of perspective. A perspective from within the world is a perspective of 7, and a perspective from above the world, or from a view from nowhere before time even starts, that is what we're talking about when we're talking about these first 3 sephiros, these first 3 emanations of the divine energy, if you want to call it that way. I'm not going to try to even explain what the idea of spheros is in the first place, because I myself don't understand. I'm just used to this language and feel comfortable using this language as an organizing principle, and here it works very well, because those first 3 spheros are called Keser, Chochma, and Bina. Keser means crown, Chochma means wisdom, and Bina means understanding. I'm just using some English words as a means to know what we're talking about, or to give it a name in English. I don't attach too much meaning to those translations. It is far more important to see how they function and what they represent. Keser is so way above our experience that it is completely invisible and unknowable. We don't know anything about this. It is up there above our heads. We say about things that we do not understand, that's above my head, that's above me. It doesn't mean some physical direction. It means it is so outside my perspective that I cannot have a grasp of it. I cannot have a tefisa. I cannot have a hasogel, we say in Hebrew. I can't grasp it. I don't have a grip on it. The moment that we start to having a little bit of a grip is in Chochma. Chochma means, or we translated it as wisdom, but it is understood by analyzing the letters by which it is written. Chochma means Kawach Ma. Kawach means potential. It means possibility, and Ma means things that are there, the potential that lies in the things that we have. In the world in which we find ourselves, that has a certain potential. It has potential, means it has a future. It goes somewhere. It's not absurd. It's not meaningless. It has a purpose, which is not yet realized. You immediately understand that we are talking now about something that happens in time, because potential means not now, but later. And when you talk about a world of time, you're talking already about a world which is not from the point of view of the Creator who is above time, who is the one who created time in the first place. So this Chochma, this Kawach Ma, is the beginning of our world, but we don't know where it comes from. That's why we find the pasuk, Chochma me'ayin temotze. Chochma is found from ayin, from not being. Ayin is another name for this keser, for this crown, for this unknowable creator, whom we don't know. Why? Because to know him is to be him. All we can see is what he allows us to see, what he reveals to us. Eis asher his alalti b'Mitzrayim, as we see in this week's Saturday in the passage that we read. Asher his alalti b'Mitzrayim, through the signs, through the manifestations of the makkos, and these last three makkos in particular, we get an idea of his alalti, how far HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in his causation of the events that we experience, is elevated above, is actually in that realm that we can suspect is there, but we will not be able to grasp. That is Chochmah. That's only a beginning. In Bina means understanding, but it is related to the word Bain. Bain means between. The moment you say between, you have Zel umazeh, you have this versus that, otherwise you don't have a between. Between already means that you make differences and that you see pluralities. Chochmah, not. Chochmah is still undivided, but Bina becomes the beginning of division. Now, let's look very carefully at the three makkos, the three so-called plagues that are described in this week's chapter. They are Arbe, Choshech, and Makkos Bechoros. Arbe, usually translated as a locust plague, but we'll see what the word actually means. Choshech means the darkness, the Egyptian darkness, and Bechoros means the slaying of the firstborn. Now, we saw that this corresponds in reverse order to the first three words of creation. And what are they? Well, if you actually go to Parashat Bo and you count the number of times that it says Vayomer, you find only 9 times Vayomer. So where is the 10th? So there the Gemara tells us, Bereshis bara nami mama have. The first words, in the beginning God created, is also an utterance. Before you even hear the voice of God speaking, he has spoken already. There is an entire reality that precedes even the beginning of Bereshis, which is the reason why the Torah starts with the base and not with an aleph. It's almost that you start in chapter 2, as when you open a Gemara, when you open a tractate of the Talmud, you also don't find a daf aleph. It doesn't exist. The first page is, so to say, missing. It always starts on daf base, because the aleph is the invisible that precedes everything. So, if we have now these first 3 words, we should count them. We have Bereshis bara, that's the first. The second one is Vayomer Elokim yehi or, is the creation of light. And the third one is Vayomer Elokim yehi rokia. The third one is that God said, let there be an expanse, a firmament that makes a difference between the things above and the things below. And this is those 3 things. Now reverse the order, and we see exactly a parallel with the 3 last makkos. The third one of the Mamorim was Vayomer Elokim yehi rokia, let there be a firmament that makes a difference between things above and things below. It's the introduction of multiplicity, and that corresponds to Arbe. Arbe, we said it means the locust plague, but the word actually means manyness or multitude. It comes from Reish base, which means many, and Arbe means a swarm, a multiplicity of things. Right? And this Arbe is this cloud of locusts that descends on the land that seems to be moving as one single whole, but actually exists of thousands and tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of insects that each have their individuality and yet together create this arbe, this swarm of locusts. That is the correspondence between rokia, meaning making difference, bringing in multiplicity, and arbe. The second one of the Mamorim is Yi'ar, and the penultimate of the Makkos is Choshech. The parallel is obvious, that Choshech corresponds to the word by which light came into the world. So if you reverse that, it's the word by which darkness descends on the land. Then finally, Makkos Bechoros. Makkos Bechoros, the slaying of the firstborn, corresponds to Bereshis Bara. As we said, Bereshis is characterized by this base, which tells us that it was not actually the real beginning, because the real beginning is hidden from us. Likewise, Bechor, the word Bechor, although it means the firstborn, the letters say something else. The letters are a base and a chaf and a resh. A base is the gematria 2, a chaf is 20, and a resh is 200. Everything about Bechor says number 2. This is why we have in the story of firstborn and secondborn children a constant conflict. Who is the real firstborn, right? Yaakov and Esau. And you have a conflict between Cain and Hevel already right in the beginning of Bereshis. The phenomenon of a discussion on who comes first is constant. Our mystical thinkers have said that this is likewise a conflict between our, let's call it spiritual and physical, by want of better expressions. Our guf and our neshama in Hebrew, our body and our soul. There are no two stuffs. One is the body stuff and the other one is the soul stuff. No. The neshama is simply the way that the body actually functions. Without the neshama, the body is dead. With the neshama, the body is alive. So the fact of life itself is an expression of the neshama. The question is, what comes first? In one sense, the guf comes first, because we say that the neshama comes into the guf 40 days after conception. On the other hand, the neshama, we say, is a chelek eloka b'mal, it's a spark of the godly from above, and obviously comes from eternity. That is to say, from a realm above time altogether. So we have this tension anyway. Now, let's then look at Chochmah and put our magnifying glass on this phenomenon of this Chochmah, which is the beginning of our understanding, our beginning of having a grasp on the reality that Hashem reveals to us. We said already, the beginning, the Keser, is beyond our grasp. We cannot fathom that. We can only intuit its existence, its presence, by the way it manifests itself in our world. But let's then look at Chochmah. There is an entire chapter in Sefer Mishlei dedicated to Chochmah, where Chochmah itself speaks. And one of the things that Chochmah says is Ba'arach, I'm now quoting from Mishlei, from Proverbs, in the 8th chapter, Perek Ches, around the 20th pasuk, I think, 2021. Ba'arach tzedakah ahalech. Chochmah says, I go in the pathways or in the byways of tzedakah, of righteousness. Besoch nesivos mishpat. Two expressions of pathways. One is nesivos, the other one is orach. There is a difference between the two. Besoch nesivos mishpat, in the middle of the highways or the main roads of mishpat, of it doesn't mean judgment here. It means the way the world is governed, governance, right? In those highways of the way the world works, there is an orach tzedakah. There are the byways or the little paths of righteousness. It doesn't mean that there is any contradiction between the two. There is no contradiction between mishpat, the way the world is organized and the way the world runs, and tzedakah, the potential of being righteous in that world. That is not a contradiction, says the Chochmah. It's a proclamation. And it continues, Lahanchil Ahavai Yesh, to cause those who love me, who love this Chochmah, to inherit Yesh. Yesh. Yesh means things that are. It's the opposite of Ayin. Ayin means the things that are not. And Yesh means tangible things. There's a little bit more to it. Yesh, the gematria, is a Yud and a Shin, is 310. The Keser, this beginning of everything that is beyond our world, which is Ayin, which is not graspable from our point of view. Keser is Kaf, Tov, Reish, and adds up to 620. So the 310 of Yesh are half of the 620. Lahanchil Ahava Yesh, that by Chochmah walking in the pathways, on the highways of the reality of the world in which we find ourselves, and there finding the Orach Tzedakah, the paths of righteousness that you have to find on the map there, somehow suss it out and find the way to act righteously in the world. Through that, you will be able to inherit Yesh, which is a contradiction. Because if you're really looking for the highest that you can get spiritually, there is no place for you, for your individuality. You have to realize how little you are. As we say, that Ein Od Milvado, the highest form of understanding the Creator, is realizing that He is and you are not. That there is no place for your individuality and there is no place for your subjective view of the world. Comes Chochmah and says, no. If you use this world in which you find yourself, which is a world created by an illusion of multiplicity, when in reality underlying it is the unity of Hashem only, the complete unity of, there are no contradictions in Hashem's world. But we cannot live like that because we are by definition a contradiction ourselves. We separate ourselves from the world around us in order to interact with it. Otherwise, there is nothing to do. If there's not me and my problems and the things with which I'm confronted, then I'm not even alive. So we spoke about it at earlier times, that in order to interact, we have to make a division between me and not me. That's an illusion, of course. In truth, that's an illusion. But without that illusion, we cannot live. To grasp that this is an illusion is this Chochmah. To grasp that although there is no other way of living than to live in a world that our sages called Alme de Shikha, a world which is falsehood, right? It means that what you see is not what you get. What you perceive is totally your perception, and therefore merely one aspect, and therefore a distortion of the underlying reality. The true reality beyond your grasp. Nevertheless, if you live in that world and you say, Ahalech ba'arach tzedakah, I will go, like Chochmah recommends here in this passage, I will go and try to find my way and to make decisions in this world based on the best of my knowledge, which are orach tzedakah, they are righteous decisions. My friends, they're still your decisions. They're still subjective. You still may be wrong. But you did the best you can in the light of your possibilities, and that is Kawach Ma. That is the potential of the Ma of what you see. Ma, by the way, is 45. It's the same gematria as Odom. It's the potential of man to act despite his limitations and reach as high as he can possibly get. If he does that, then he has realized what Hashem meant when he confronted us with these last three makkahs. What he said to by way of his message to Moshe Rabbeinu, when Leman Shisi Osausai Ele Bekirbau. Osausai, the word Os, sign, is an Aleph, a Vav, and a Tov. It connects the Aleph, the beginning, with the Tov at the end and puts a Vav in between. Just like in the first three of these words of creation, you have an Aleph at the beginning, the Kesser, the unknowable, you have a Tov, 400, the most, the highest number that you can reach with the Hebrew alphabet is this Tov, is this 400. That's the ultimate multiplicity. 400 is the longest you can possibly get. And the Vav in between, the connector in between, that both contrasts and connects. That is Ososai Eled, my Aleph through Tov, everything that I have revealed to you, which you need to know. The Aleph, the Chaf Beis Osios, the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet in which the Torah is written, is all you need for anything in this world that you need to decide. You ask the Torah, what should I do in these circumstances? You won't find, it's not an oracle that you can, it's not Google, right? You don't type in, this is my problem, and no. It takes a lot of work. You have to learn it. You have to learn the halacha. You have to divest yourself from your narrow self-interest. You have to be as objective as you can be, while knowing that you can never be objective, that you will always be subjective. But that's fine, because there's not much more asked from you. This is what you have to listen to, and this is what the message that we get at the basis of our becoming a nation. When we left Mitzrayim, we left through the mechanism of these 10 plagues, these 10 makkahs, not because they were a liberation. We mentioned it last week. After we left Mitzrayim, we ended up in the Midbar. We ended up in the wilderness, and we quickly looked over our shoulder and said, what did we get into? Let's go back to Mitzrayim. It's not easy to be free. It's not easy to not be under Pare. It's not easy not to be in Mitzrayim. But that's the kind of freedom, the challenge, the responsibility to which the Torah has called us. To make the best of what we can possibly make out of this world. The Karach Ma, the potential of man. I went a bit in the deep end. I apologize if it was a bit too deep and it lacked practical applications. But, sometimes you have to. I wish you a good Shabbos.